Hello everyone, Joshua Myers here, and welcome back to my 31 Days of Halloween Review series. And today I'm going to be looking at the cult classic vampire movie, Fright Night, from 1985.
Charlie Brewster is about to discover there are some very good reasons to be afraid of the dark.
Look, I know it's crazy. I know that, but look, Lieutenant!
What happens if you go into that house alone and he gets you?
Fright Night. If you love being scared, it'll be the night of your life. Rated R. Now at select theaters. Check newspapers for showtimes.
Fright Night stars Chris Sarandon, William Ragsdale, Roddy McDowall, and is directed by Tom Holland. The plot of Fright Night is that when teenager Charlie Brewster discovers that his new neighbor Jerry Andrews is a vampire, he tries to warn everyone. No one believes him, and he's on his own to prevent his mother, girlfriend, and his best friend from becoming the vampire's next victim. Now, before I get on to the rest of my review, I would like to say I never saw this movie before. This was my first time watching it, and man, do I have a lot of thoughts on this movie, so let's just dive right into them. One of the things I could say about it is there's so much to say, actually. I don't even know where to start. Okay, for one, I dug the story. I dug the ways they handle it, too, in the sense with the characters in it. Because, I mean, you know, it could sound like a typical cheese fest, which it is at times, it is, admittedly. But it's a fun. I do like the fact that, like, I like the characters, actually. That's another positive. And all this coincides with the story, actually. So that's why I'm talking about both right now. So, I like basically every character in this movie. There was not one character I did not like, or hated, or found annoying to the point where I wanted to chop my balls off, you know? And like chop my balls off and just plug them in my ears. There was no character like that here. I like the main character, Charlie Brewster, and one of the things I like about him is that he is relatable, and especially relatable to horror fans, considering he is a horror fan. And that makes it difficult for the people around him to believe him that his new neighbor is a vampire. I mean, most people, if you were to say, oh, my neighbor's a vampire, and that, if you were just an average Joe, you'd still be seen as crazy. But take into account that Charlie here is a horror movie fanatic, like the rest of us. That just makes it even look more insane than the average Joe who would say something like that. I really liked his girlfriend in this movie. She was a really likable character in that, and you could relate to her as well. And it was one of those things, like, because they had some relationship drama in this movie, so basically their relationship was unhinged and like on the edge. And I was really invested, actually. They got me invested enough to where I cared about what was going to happen. In fact, I didn't want them to split up, or even worse. Also, I did like his best friend, Evil Ed, as he's called in this movie. Just found him funny, and then he kind of had my sense of, like, deranged humor a bit. You know, kind of deranged, psychotic humor. So, that's real relatable. Also, I like the, horror host that, you know, Charlie watches on TV, which he ends up trying to recruit to help kill the vampire. And that's with the character Peter Vincent, which is actually a combination of Peter Cushing and Vincent. And I really did like this character. He's this horror host who's kind of been washed up and everything, you know. Feels like he can't make a name for himself anymore. And of course, when Charlie does try to recruit him to help kill the vampire, of course he doesn't believe him, because, I mean, he's not like as... In his show, he portrays himself as a vampire killer, but then again, it's a show. It's just a character, persona. It's not real. And that too, and there's this whole thing in which, you know, because if you try to use... Because one of the things you could do to you know, keep vampires away is with crosses, you know, Christian cross and everything. And, you know, and they mentioned throughout the whole movie that you need to have faith in Christian religion in order for that to work on vampires. And there were a lot of times where that didn't work when Peter Vincent tried to do it because he didn't have that faith. Until a little bit spoilers towards the end of the film, he does have that faith, you know, that faith finds, and he and Charlie are able to defeat this, like, the evil force in this movie. Which, talking about the evil force, the vampire, portrayed by Chris Sarandon, Jerry. I really dug this version of the vampire, you know, like, he just seems like he comes off as actually a cool guy and everything like that, and charming too, that, to be honest, it could be very, like, you could see how anybody could be deceived by this person, you know, like, just anybody really, and eventually be able to be turned into a vampire yourself, you know. And but yeah, I just really dug Jerry in this movie, the main vampire. Also, I dug the music. I'm not sure there's much to talk about that one. The music's just really good. The atmosphere, it's very atmospheric. It kind of harks back to the old school vampire movies, like, you know, the Bela Lugosi Dracula and stuff like that. Also, the pacing of this film is really good. Like, it went by really fast while at the same time, you know, still had time to build up the slow moments. And actually, for me, like I mentioned before, there's humor in this film, and for me, the humor works. I just thought it was funny, actually, at times. But it didn't went overboard in the funny scale, in my honest opinion, to where, you know, like in the comedy scale, to where it is still a horror movie. Also, I dug the practical effects in this movie. So good. I mean, this film gives you just most of everything you want to see in a vampire movie. Of course, you got the fangs and stuff like that. Biting into people's necks and everything with the blood gushing out. You also got, you know, vampire, like, people transforming into vampire bats and stuff like that. And one thing I did not saw coming, there is a werewolf in this movie, and there's a werewolf transformation scene in this movie, which is actually a really good practical effect. And honestly, for me, I could keep on going on and on about what I love so much about this movie. So let's just get into my negatives. I really have none outside of the fact of a bit of logic issues. One of the logic issues, and it's only one, and that's regarding the werewolf. The person who transforms into a werewolf was a vampire. So I'm like, could vampires turn into werewolves now? But honestly, for me, that's it with my negatives, and that's just a but I did notice that logic issue. So with that said, I'm going to give the original Fright Night a 5 out of 5 stars. This is such an awesome movie. I honestly cannot believe it took me this long to check it out. And I really dug that. Like, I really loved the hell out of this movie. I did have it on DVD once, but then I traded it in. I do regret that, actually. I'm thinking about the next time I go to the pawn shop, seeing if I can find it again. And if I do, that would be one of the first few things I grab. So Fright Night, if you're someone like me and who has never seen this movie, please give it a watch. Especially if you love horror movies and vampire movies and stuff like that. This is such an awesome movie. And speaking of which, this is the second movie I've reviewed on my channel that's directed by Tom Holland. No, not the Spider-Man Tom Holland, but he's the same guy who directed the original Child's Play, but I have yet to review Child's Play. The other review I did of a movie he directed was Psycho 2, which I love that movie as well. In fact, so far I love Fright Night more than Psycho 2, to be honest. Psycho 2 is still a really awesome movie, to the point where I'm definitely wanting to get the Scream Factory Collector's Edition of it. Yeah, but at some point I will try to review Child's Play. And honestly, I think Tom Holland so far is actually a really good horror film director. And one that I think is kind of underrated, actually. And as far as I know, he hasn't done anything much after, like, these 3 films. It's kind of a shame, actually. I kind of wonder what would have happened if he kept on making more horror movies. So that's it for my review. Thank you guys for watching, and see you next time.